Welcome back, everybody. We're here again with our monthly update on AlphaPix, Seeking Alpha's stock picking service, which we're experimenting with in 2025 to see the differences in performance based on how we actually use the service. And we're evaluating 4 different strategies to do so. And just to recap what they are: Strategy 1, the full AlphaPix portfolio with matching allocations; Strategy 2, adding and holding all the strong buy rated companies in the list; Strategy 3, simply adding every new stock released by AlphaPix each month; and Strategy 4, adding stocks on the AlphaPix list that also meet my own personal criteria. Now, obviously, I can't show you the stocks in the AlphaPix portfolio because that's not fair to Seeking Alpha, but we're at about a year now of experimenting with the service, and the results across all 4 strategies have been pretty interesting. Plus, they have their Black Friday sale starting today, which we'll get into at the end. And let's go ahead and start with Strategy 1, which is pretty straightforward. We basically mimic the AlphaPix list completely, buying all the same stocks in the same weights that exist on their portfolio. This would mean that we would match their published performance of the picks as our portfolio would match the AlphaPix one overall. And as stocks get added to the list, we'll add them in the same weight that they do. And once stocks get trimmed or sold out of completely, we would do the same. So we're just blindly following their method and making changes whenever they do. All right, so let's take a look at some stats for this portfolio. For Strategy 1, I have 37 total holdings. And since the beginning of the year, I would have made 35 initial buys when I started the portfolio, 21 buys since, with 18 being brand new adds, as well as 20 sells, 17 of them being sold completely. Now, since our last video, I have a total of 8 transactions, 2 of which were buys and 6 were sales. Now, in terms of performance, I don't actually have to track this one separately since it simply matches the list, so we can see the performance on the Seeking Alpha site. Now, currently the strategy has returned a 40.60% year to date compared to the S&P 500's 14.36%. And if we just take a look at the previous month, you can see the AlphaPix portfolio is up 6.13% compared to the S&P 500 being down 0.20%. And again, as the year has gone on, the full AlphaPix portfolio has really separated itself from the market. And like we talked about last month, it's doing it with a portfolio that includes tech but isn't really primarily focused on it. So I think it's interesting for people who aren't necessarily opposed to having some tech in their portfolio, but don't want the level of concentration in it like I have in my own. Okay, so let's take a look at how our custom strategies are doing. And first up is Strategy 2, our strong buy and hold approach, which is where we buy all the strong buy rated stocks no matter what and buy them in equal amounts, which for this experiment will act like we're buying $1,000 worth of each stock. And if a stock's rating changes to sell or it gets removed from AlphaPix, then we'll sell at that time. But if the stock simply goes from strong buy to buy or even to hold, then we'll keep holding. And if new stocks get added and have a strong buy rating, we'll add them to the portfolio, buying $1,000 worth. All right, so let's take a look at some stats for this portfolio. Now for Strategy 2, I currently have 32 holdings, and since the beginning of the year, I've made 16 initial buys when I started the portfolio, 23 additional buys since, and 7 sell transactions, with a total of 7 transactions since the last video, which were 2 buys and 5 sells. Now, in terms of performance, year-to-date, this strategy has returned 26.89% compared to the S&P 500's 15.34%. And remember, for these, the S&P 500 number is based on the timing of the buys and sells within this portfolio, so it's going to be slightly different for each one. And if we just take a look for the previous month, you can see that this strategy just narrowly trailed the index for the month, being up 0.19% compared to the index's 0.41%. And now if we just take a look at the distribution of returns, what I really notice is that, one, not only are there really big winners, but the number of winners is pretty consistent. There's a bunch of them. And then again, even when you scroll down to the losers, you definitely have some there, which should be expected. But in terms of stocks still in the portfolio, it's relatively tame. And what's interesting, though, is that if we actually take a look at the ones that have been sold, most of those have been recent. And you can see that there were a couple big winners there as well, up like 200% or 69%. But then there were also some big losers, down 55, 45, and 29%. So what I take for this is really 2 things. One, the amount of sell activity has definitely picked up over the past month or so. I mean, way more than the rest of the year combined. But also what I'm seeing is that anytime they have a stock that maybe is not performing well, doesn't meet their criteria anymore, they're cutting it, right? They're not just holding on to it, hoping it's going to come back. They're actually just moving on from it and letting their winners go. All right, so next up is Strategy 3, and this is the one where we only add the new picks as they're announced. So for this, I'll add every new stock that gets added to the list, but I won't worry about any previous picks that are already there. AlphaPix adds at least 2 picks each month, so there's more than enough stocks even with just focusing on the new ones. Now for this, we'll also be adding $1,000 worth of each new ad, and if the stocks get removed from AlphaPix, then we'll sell. But again, if they just move to a hold rating, then we'll still hold them. Alright, so let's take a look at some stats for this portfolio. Now for strategy 3, I currently have 19 total holdings, and since the beginning of the year, I've made one initial buy when we started the portfolio, and then 20 additional buys since, basically one on each 2-week interval as I announced new stocks. And then a total of 2 sell transactions, with 3 total transactions since the last video, 2 of them being buys, and 1 of them being a sale. Now, in terms of year-to-date performance, this strategy has returned 15.91% compared to the S&P 500's 11.59%. And if we just take a look at the previous month, you can see that strategy 3 is actually down negative 1.47% on the month compared to the index being up 0.49%. So just looking at the distribution of returns, even though this strategy has less overall holdings than the previous one, the story is actually pretty similar. You have a couple big winners at the top and a good amount of solid winners overall. And yes, you have a few losers, but the amount of losers is less than the winners, and the percentage lost tends to be much lower than the winners gained. And then similar to what we talked about with the previous strategy, they had a recent sell as well, which was a big loser that they cut. And to me, strategy 3 has always been the most interesting option that I wanted to follow this year because it's clearly the easiest one for pretty much anyone to be able to implement, because all you're doing is taking kind of the new stocks as they come out and buying them without having to worry about matching allocations and trying to buy old picks and hoping that they're still good. This is really the easiest option to kind of implement. I think it's probably the one that most people will try if they buy the service. And so being able to see performance that, at least for now, is outpacing the index and a similar distribution of returns, I think is encouraging. Because a lot of times the best strategy is the one that you'll actually keep up with and continue doing over time. So I'm really curious to see if strategy 3's returns actually start improving as the picks are in your portfolio for longer. And maybe it starts getting closer or matching what we see with strategy 2 or even strategy 1. All right, so then lastly, strategy 4. Now this is where we only add stocks to the list that also fit my own personal criteria. Now in this scenario, I'm just using AlphaPix as an idea service and a way to learn about new opportunities. I'll still go through my own process to see if they fit, but in general, I'm not going to be too picky about it. As long as they loosely fit what I'm looking for, I'm going to add them. And just like the other approaches, we'll buy $1,000 worth of each one. And then again, if they get removed from AlphaPix, we'll sell. But if they just move to a hold rating, we'll keep holding. All right, so let's take a look at some stats for this portfolio. Now for strategy 4, I currently have 6 total holdings. And since the beginning of the year, I've made 4 initial buys when we started the portfolio, 4 additional buys since, and 2 sales. And since the last video, we've had 2 transactions, 1 buy, and 1 sale. Now, in terms of performance, year-to-date, this strategy has returned 22.47% compared to the S&P 500's 11.85%. So still outpacing the index year-to-date and actually accelerating quite a bit from the previous month. And if we just look at that previous month, you can kind of see why. Strategy 4 was up a whopping 8.62% and well above the index, which was up 0.69%. And if we take a look at the distribution of returns, this is really a story about one big winner driving a lot of the return, but also cutting losers like we did in the other portfolios, because this also had a sale over the past month of its big loser, and they basically just kept the winners, with the one in particular absolutely crushing it. And of course, with only a handful of stocks, each performance is going to be that much more magnified in terms of impacting your total return. But look, when it's working, this is what happens. All right, so what are my overall thoughts about this month? Now, if we just take a look at the performance of these strategies together, we can see that as of now, the best performing strategy is still strategy 1, where we simply mimic Seeking Alpha's list, including the weights that they have. But strategy 2, where we buy all the strong buy related stocks, is outperforming by quite a bit as well. And strategy 4, where I'm using my own criteria to screen, made a really big jump also. But again, the real story is that so far as of November, all 4 strategies are still outpacing the S&P 500. But one thing that I've noticed after doing this for the past year or so is that the performance of the picks seems to be getting stronger over time, at least up to this point. Because if you take the performance of strategy 1, that's basically holding the full list in its entirety, no matter what it's currently rated, and it has the best performance out of the 4. Now, strategy 2 holds all the strong buy rated stocks and started even with the existing ones that were already in the list, and that has the next best performance. And then strategy 3, which is only the new picks as they've been added, is still outperforming the index, but not performing as well as the other two, at least not yet. And just by definition, that one's going to have less picks and holding them for less time. So it seems like the longer you hold the picks, the better the performance is, at least based on how the strategy showed today. So that's why I said it's going to be interesting to see if strategy 3 continues to improve versus the other two strategies over time or not. And just FYI, the reason why I'm not talking about strategy 4 in this example is because it's kind of just a one-off strategy related to my own criteria. So it doesn't really say a ton about AlphaPix other than I can use it as an idea service only and still have success with it. But overall, I think this is a really encouraging story for AlphaPix. We used a simple strategy like just buying the new picks each month that pretty much anyone can do, and we've seen success year to date in terms of outpacing the index, and if this pattern holds, then we should expect that performance to potentially continue to get better over time. And to me, this is a really cool finding out of this experiment because, when we started this, I didn't really know how it was going to perform, how things were going to do, but I think based on how this year has gone, it's been really positive for AlphaPix. But then, of course, you always will have the people who say, yeah, but it's a bull market, and how will they do in a bear market? And look, I say the same thing whenever people say that about my own portfolio, is that yeah, we obviously would want to judge how it does in a bear market, but first we need a bear market to be able to do that because otherwise, you can only judge based on the market that we have. So we'll just have to see if the market actually does go risk off here in the near future and what that's going to mean for the performance of these strategies. But based on the time frame that we've had up to this point, it's done really well. Now, one update for this month, Seeking Alpha has started their Black Friday sale, so if you were interested in AlphaPix, then you can get them for a discount over the next few weeks. The sale is going to run from today, November 12th to December 10th, with AlphaPix being $100 off at $399. Now, if you're interested in Seeking Alpha Premium plus AlphaPix together, normally that would cost you $798, but you can get that for over $200 off at $574. Now, as I mention every time, I am a Seeking Alpha affiliate, so if you use my link to sign up, then I do get compensated at no additional cost to you. As always, full transparency. But I think what's cool about this video series that we've done is we've been able to work through using the service, actually see how it's performed with a bunch of different approaches, because we've gotten a much deeper look at what the service is all about. So at this point, if you've been watching these videos, it should be pretty clear to you if it's something that makes sense for you or not. And hopefully you guys feel the same and got that answer for yourself based on these videos. Now, I will be back next month to kind of do, wrapping up year-end performance of these strategies and all that. And I honestly haven't decided if I'm going to continue this series into 2026. Originally, it was just going to be a 2025 thing, but I think it might be kind of interesting to continue going and seeing, how these things evolve, more than 1 year out. But definitely let me know down in the comments if it's something that you're interested in and want to see continue, and I'll let you guys know where it ends up next month. But as of right now, all 4 AlphaPix strategies that we're using are outperforming the market, so it'll be fun to see if that pattern holds as we get to the end of the year. Now, if you missed my full review of the AlphaPix service and you want to check that out, you can watch that by clicking this video right here. Hope you guys have a great day out there. Financial independence is true freedom, so keep building and stacking wins, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.